Hey y'all, I'm Sarah, founder and consultant here at Triple Creeks Consulting, and I'm super excited to share with you this brief video on using systems thinking to design calendars and projects. In this video, we're going to cover what systems thinking is and how it influences our way of operating in the world, and ultimately how we're actually all already systems thinkers. It's going to help us challenge hustle culture by setting boundaries around your time and helping get clear on your capacity, and some techniques on how to make your projects more smooth and effective just in general. This is going to give you a bit of insight also into the work that we do here at Triple Creeks Consulting, and bonus, some free tech tips to shape up your calendars and approach project management. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Let's go ahead and dive into the presentation. So today we are going to be talking about using systems thinking to manage calendars and projects. This is a really, really big topic. It's really broad, and we're going to try to be both broad and really specific about this topic. So I'm excited to do this with you all. Ruth, you can go ahead and pop to the next slide. So I'm Sarah, as Natalie said. I founded a consulting company a few years ago called Triple Creeks Consulting, and we focus on practical operational approaches to organizational change. We work with clients to help primarily with technology solutions and strategic values-based planning. And it's so lovely to see some familiar faces on the call. I've worked already with some of you in that capacity. And also, I'm originally an ag student. So that's a little known fact about me. I actually studied in Washington State at Evergreen State College. So Marcia, you might know some of my colleagues over there. And agriculture really opened up an understanding of the natural world for me that actually still inspires a lot of my work today. So I have a long history in agricultural-based nonprofits. So let's go ahead and dive into what systems thinking is. Can you move to the next slide, Ruth? Great, thank you. So systems thinking has been defined in many ways, but a guy named Steve Brown specifically has a definition that I like a lot. He describes it as a mindset more than a prescribed practice. Systems thinking is a holistic way to investigate factors and interactions that could contribute to a positive outcome. And for me, I personally like to see systems as unique and unique lenses, adaptive within the confines of their relationship with other things. For example, systemic injustice and different barriers that most people experience to some extent. And they are also extremely effective at making change. So for me, doing business and nonprofit consulting, systems are what I focus on in order to be the catalyst for change in an organization or in a project. So systems can be really, really big, like governmental systems or cultural systems, structural systems, environmental systems, and they can be super, super small. They can be technology, work processes, individual relationship dynamics, and things like that. But either way, if you're addressing something using a systems thinking mindset, you can make big, I believe, you can make big, efficient change. So let's move on to the next slide, Ruth. So again, for me, agriculture is a system. You look at this and you see if you're an ag student, you see the micronutrients in the soil that are supporting the root and the growth of the plants. You're seeing the workers who are lovingly cultivating the land. You see the elements of nature like water and infrastructure from the city that's supporting the farmers getting paid for their labor, all of these things. So this is what I like to think of as a perfect system when run well. All right. So now we're going to move into illustrating how ultimately that we're all already actually systems thinkers, because I believe that humans are innately systems thinkers, and especially humans that are in the field of work that we are all in, and how that contributes to our understanding of the world. So Natalie is going to pop a Jamboard in the chat for you. And this is a link to an interactive slide series of questions. And you'll be able to edit these slides. So Ruth, if you can go ahead and open it up. So we're going to start out with this loaded question and get to know each other a little bit more, which is, I prefer strawberries or blueberries. And over on the left hand sidebar, Ruth, if you would navigate over to that on your screen, you'll see that there's a little marker icon, the first icon, and you can hit that pen icon. You can also hit, I think there's like a thicker one. You can erase things. So just hit the pen icon, select the color that you want your pen to be in, and go ahead and make a mark on the screen with where you find yourself in that spectrum of preference of strawberries versus blueberries. And I'm gonna give y'all a minute to navigate. Yeah, we got some people right in the middle, smack dab in the middle. Don't blame ya. For sure. Some people feel very, very strongly about blueberries. That's great too. I see some thinking maybe about the strawberry side of things, but there we go. We have a strawberry fan. Great. All right. A couple folks who feel somewhat in the middle. It's okay if you move the bar. All right. Awesome. Awesome. Lots of differing perspectives here on the spectrum. All right, let's scroll to the next slide. So slide 2 out of 9. So this is a little bit more of a weighted question. I tend to be more comfortable with big picture thinking or detail-oriented thinking. And you can make hearts and stars and you can even add a sticky note on the left-hand side. That's one of the options on the bar. You could add some things, some thoughts that you might have about this type of statement. Okay, somebody is really into details. I feel that. Sometimes I can hold you up. I get into that issue a lot myself. Awesome. I really enjoy both and thinking. They are needed to accomplish big tasks. All right, somebody's already getting to the punchline here. Awesome. Great. All right, let's move on to slide 3. I am a morning person or a night owl. All right. We already have somebody who feels very strongly about nights. That's great. I think if I had to put myself on the spectrum, I might be right smack dab in the middle. I function best between like 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., I think. Oh, nice. Yep. Nights, mornings, great. I bet these are the people with the morning practice where you get up and drink your coffee for an hour. Awesome. I'm a former night owl who is turning into a morning person. Yes, change happens. Well, I love that. That's great. I was thrilled when I started to become more of a morning person. All right, let's go to the next slide. Awesome. So for this next activity, I want you to put, again, some sort of shape. So we're moving on to slide 4 of 9. X marks the spot or whatever to indicate if you have heard any of these statements in your work, school, or home environment. And if you have heard them, you can put, a dot or an X within the circle of the ones that you've heard. So the statements here are, it's either X or Y, it can't be both. There's a right answer, and it's important to understand it. Nature versus nurture, red pill, blue pill. So these are all examples of, and now we're going to use some systems thinking to kind of deconstruct these narratives, right? So first of all, the first 3 examples that I walked you through, somebody lovingly pointed out, and I'm so glad that you got to the punchline before I even got there. These are false dichotomies, right? Morning person, night owl. Sometimes you're both, and it may change over the course of your life. Strawberries, blueberries, those are false dichotomies. And these statements are also what I would believe as false dichotomies. So using systems thinking, we can understand duality as a system, that we've been taught often that it's rarely that it's often either or as opposed to both and. However, the truth is it's actually usually a both and thing. We really like this simplicity of dualism as humans, but answers and decisions are often really, really subjective and very nuanced. So a right answer may not exist, and perhaps it's not an either or, but more of a both and. And really, as a science student at Evergreen, I really learned that it's a lot more about asking the right questions to get to an answer that works to the situation at hand, as opposed to really trying to define what a correct answer is. But it seems like we've all heard these narratives, right? And this is our work in deconstructing them. All right, let's move to the next slide. All right, so same here. Somebody's already gotten in here. They've heard all of them. I have been in a work/school/home environment that has told me 40-hour work weeks are normal. If you try hard, you'll be rich. Practice makes perfect. And just keep working harder or better or faster. So as systems thinkers, more than 40 hours. My gosh, yeah, right? More than 40 hours. And yet we've been told we have people who've fought for the 40-hour work week for us, right? As systems thinkers, we understand capitalism as a system. Capitalism is a moving target of fruitful labor and perfectionism. So if you're constantly striving for this elusive or undefined perfection, it's really going to instill with us this insatiable appetite for just like a little bit more, a little bit better. And again, that's a moving target that's never going to be realized. And it ultimately leads to our ultimate burnout. So again, as systems thinkers, we can deconstruct these narratives. All right, let's move to the next slide. I have been in a work/school/home environment that has told me I am only worth what I produce. It's kind or important to prioritize other people's needs over myself. Self-care is selfish. All right, so you guys have made your beautiful marks in these statements that we've heard. And so using systems thinking, we can deconstruct these statements by understanding our health as a system. We cannot pour from an empty cup. Our body needs to rest in order to produce well and efficiently. And if we are not well balanced internally, then therefore neither are the projects or organizations we create. So again, using systems thinking, we can deconstruct these narratives. All right, next slide, please, Ruth. So we are on 7 of 9. So I have been in a work/school/home environment that has told me it's a dog-eat-dog world. In order to succeed, you need to build yourself up to be better. The only person you can ultimately depend on is yourself, and you need to find your own way. So again, using systems thinking, we can deconstruct these narratives because we understand our community as a system and that rugged individualism is ultimately not effective for change. The only way that we're going to make meaningful change is going to be to work together with like-minded people towards a common goal. And if we compete, we may be missing out on important opportunities for growth and collaboration. All right, and then the last slide. I have been in a work/school/home environment that has told me you have the same opportunity as everyone else. Why can't you just ... fill in the blank. We treat everyone the same, regardless of ... You got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. If I or they could do it, anyone can. And for this last slide, we use systems thinking to deconstruct these narratives because we understand systemic injustice as a system, that there's inequitable access and opportunity, and not everyone is created or treated as equal, and therefore people's opportunities and life paths vary dramatically. Awesome. Thank you all so much for participating in the Jamboard. I would love it if you would reflect on that, maybe with some one-word reactions in the chat about how that exercise made you feel, maybe what it brought up for you. If there's any reflections, I would love to hear that. But we're going to move on to some practical examples. So Ruth, let's pop back to the presentation. Thought-provoking. I like to use systems thinking to not be so black and white in my thoughts. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the goal here. The both and thinking. So interactive. Awesome. Yay, great. And that was also a tool, an example of a tool that you can use to be interactive in your projects. I really like Jamboard as a way to engage people in presentations and get kind of group feedback without having to, kind of wait for the delay of people putting things in the chat and those kinds of things. Powerful, especially with the fact that everyone's opportunities are indeed different. Yes, absolutely. Eye-opener, different perspectives on commonly heard phrases. Yay, good, I'm glad. Awesome. So now we're going to apply systems thinking to a practical example. Your time management and calendar. So calendars are a big topic of discussion for me and my clients, including Natalie. Actually, we were talking about this week. So before sitting down on your own or with a team to devise a project, make a change or solve a problem, I like to think about the different systems that my ideas could impact. So for example, you want a balanced work/school/life calendar that allows you to keep going at a rate that's sustainable to you. These systems that your time management will affect might be your family, the time you can spend with your family, your education, the time it takes to graduate, and your finances and the amount of money that you can earn. So these are all super, super important things, right? I've found that by identifying these systems that these projects or problems could affect, it makes me much more motivated to do them well. So when I think about all of these effects of my calendar, I'm like, I really need to do this well for the sake of all of these things that it's going to affect in order to honor myself and my own needs. So the reality is I want to be able to balance everything at once. And I know that it also takes some sacrifice and some compromise as well. So scheduling your time well is going to be essential in making all of these systems function. So time blocking and calendar management. So again, this is a big, big topic for me and my clients. And I think that the most important thing for me regarding time blocking and calendar management is that it is three things. It's realistic, it's fluid, and it's accessible. So you can do this work on any medium at all. If you have a physical calendar, do it on your physical calendar. If you live and breathe by your physical calendar, please do this on your physical calendar. Personally, I use Google Calendar a lot for various reasons. I have a lot of clients who use that same platform as well. So Google Calendar is my time blocker of choice. And this is a screenshot from Google Calendar and what Google Calendar can look like if you set it up in this way. But there are a lot of apps that will help you do this. Be warned, sometimes I've found in time blocker apps, calendar apps, sometimes the automations and reminders are too much for me. So again, it's just really important that it works for the level of reminders and automations that you want in your life. So in Google Calendar specifically, for those of you who might already be using this tool, I like to do my time blocks on another calendar than my regular schedule. So you have the option in Google Calendar to actually create multiple calendars. And then I like to overlay my time blocking calendar onto my real calendar. And then I turn it on when I'm scheduling an appointment, and other than that, I turn it off. So I kind of like the flexibility of seeing both of those things. I know some of that might not make sense to you if you're not familiar with the functions of Google Calendar, but I implore you to check them out if you're at all curious, because that is possible in Google Calendar. So again, like I said, the most important thing is to make this realistic. So do not overcommit at all. So time blocking is basically, as you can see from the example, right? we're putting out blocks of time for different areas of work in our lives. So for example, for the case of this example, I have family time, I have class time, and I have work time because I'm trying to balance all of these things at once in my calendar, right? But again, it's super important that you be realistic. If you overcommit, it's just going to be overwhelming. And I feel really strongly that you should use it as a tool to outline your boundaries that you would like to have around your schedule. But if it's not realistic, it's not going to work and you're not going to use it. So it's not going to be helpful for you. And at the same time, you can also use it to set goals for yourself as well. So if you really, really want to be done with work by 6 p.m. every day, you can use that to make a commitment to yourself to do that and reinforce those boundaries. It also needs to be fluid. So it needs to be able to change when your needs change. You very well might have the schedule for a semester, and the next semester, your times for your classes are going to rotate or whatever it is. And it needs to be able to be fluid. So you need to give yourself right off the bat permission to change it if it needs to be changed. Otherwise, it's going to become irrelevant and you're going to see it as annoying or feel really guilt trippy about it when you see it. And that is the exact opposite of what you want from a time blocking calendar. And then again, you want it to be accessible. So you want to understand your time blocks, why they exist, and be able to easily reference them. So again, that was what the tech tip for me of having a separate Google Calendar that I can toggle on and off. It's super accessible for me when I want to be scheduling appointments. Again, if you live and die by your handwritten calendar, then that's great. It's already a tool that you're regularly checking. So just make sure that your time blocks are kind of spelled out in there in a way that it's easy to reference. And again, do this in whatever medium makes sense to you. And your written calendar in your computer with reminders, maybe. Some people like to use alarms on their phone for different time blocks. So there's a lot of different mediums where you can block out time. All right, before we move on to the second example, I just wanted to give some moments for any questions. You're welcome to unmute yourself. Natalie suggested that maybe you might need a little bit more prompting. So maybe if you all want to share potentially what time blocks, or if you're using time blocking currently in your life and how it's helping, or if you have time blocks that you want to start time blocking in. And I see Brandy's hand, so I'm going to call on Brandy.
I was just going to say, this is really, really important with holding boundaries with other people too. So like I'm in a work environment where supervisors and their admins have access to my calendar. And so if I don't have things blocked off, like if I know I'm going to do something, like I'm going to work on that grant at this time, and I know that, but I don't put it in my calendar, they're going to schedule me for meetings. And so I put in everything that I'm planning on doing in detail. So my Fridays, I don't have meetings because that's my writing day. And so if somebody emails me and begs, maybe I can squeeze in an hour here or there, right? But they're not going to just go into my calendar and schedule me for a meeting. And so if you look at my calendar, every single hour from 7 to 6 is blocked with something. Now that might be that it's my lunch or that I'm exercising for an hour. They can't read what it is, but they know that that time is blocked off. And so if they want to schedule me, they now have to reach out and actually ask and have a reason versus just going in and commandeering my time. So they move into places where it's the same way. And this is a way that you can protect and have power over your own time.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you for that. Boundaries with yourself and with others. I love that. That's really great. And it is super helpful as you start to have people working for you too. I'm sure you've had that experience, Brandy, just being very clear of like, this is when I'm available and this is when I'm not. And then it makes it a lot more easy for other people to schedule things for you within timeframes that work.
Right. And coming from a systems mindset, right? It's not just about, for me, right? I'm trying to create a culture that bucks capitalism and bucks the hustle mindset. And so by me modeling this to my postdocs, to my students, right, to my admins, I am also saying to them, I value your time. And so if I'm emailing you at 9 o'clock, right? And I tell them this, if I'm emailing at you 9 o'clock, first of all, I hope you're not looking at your email at 9 o'clock. I don't expect you to get that until you get to work in the morning. Do not answer me during your family time. I want you spending time with your family, and I don't want you calling me during my family time unless it is an absolute emergency. And so I think it's a matter of, yes, setting boundaries for ourselves, setting boundaries for others, but also as we move up and we start to have power and influence, it's about modeling to other people that they, who may not have as much power, right, that they have the right to have that power and to hold that power for themselves and to be the kind of leader that I wish I had had, at other places in my life.
Yeah, one of my favorites, or one of my most important mentors in my life that was a former boss, used to tell me, when you tell me no, I can trust your yes. And that, being told by somebody who was a supervisor, was super empowering. Just made a huge impact on so I love hearing, it sounds like you're the type of boss that would say something like that. And that's great. We need more bosses like that in the world. Awesome. And then Natalie says in the chat, I want to recommend a great tool for coordinating and syncing multiple calendars. It allows a work or school colleague to see that you are busy with a work or personal commitment, so you can't double book. And it's Reclaim.ai. The link for it is in the chat. And I think that there's a couple different technologies that we've even explored together, Natalie, about that. Yeah, it's great. Great quote. When you tell me no, I can trust your yes. Yes.
Yeah, I use SyncJane, but I think Reclaim is much better. And I've since replaced SyncJane with Reclaim. So highly recommended.
All right, let's move on to our next example of applying systems thinking to projects this time. So, practical example, the dreaded group project, which I'm sure some of you are more adjacent to than you would like to be. The group project is notoriously a headache, right? In college. So the example is, you have a school project that's due at the end of the quarter with 5 other students, and it's your collective final thesis before you graduate. You have to design and test a hypothesis, consolidate and present your data to the class. So this is actually an example of something that I had to do in college. All right, let's go to the next slide. So using systems thinking, we like to think about process development and get really, really good at asking good questions. So this is kind of a breakdown of how I would apply systems thinking to thinking about this group project. First of all, I would define the milestones. And these are some of the questions that I would like to get answered if it's a group, by the full group, right? What are the big pieces of the project that need to be created? When do you want to have each part of the project done, and who is responsible for monitoring which milestones? It's great to have milestones, but ultimately you need people who are responsible for them. Then you need to define the tools that you need. What needs to be created or purchased or designed, usually some sort of tech or some sort of physical supplies, anything like that, in order to get things done efficiently. What information needs to be collected in order to complete the project, and how does this fit into your milestones? Meaning, what information needs to be collected by when, basically, in order to meet your milestones. Then you define your roles. Who's going to be doing what? What is the role of the group as a whole, right? It is a group project. You do need to deliver some sort of final milestone that is cohesive. And what is the role of each individual or subgroup? Often with large group projects, sometimes you'll break into subgroups that are each responsible for different elements, right? And then you need to define your check-in or accountability points. How frequently is the group going to check in, and what is the structure of those check-ins going to be? How is information going to be shared and consolidated? How will communication be conducted between the meetings? And how will feedback be provided to members of the group? So these are all, again, really important questions to think about as you're designing really any project, right? And ultimately, by using a systems thinking approach, it means that you can focus on both the big picture things, right? But then you can also answer them very in detail, which kind of dismantles this dichotomy of being a big thinker or a detail-oriented thinker, because you can kind of do both through this process, right? We're both zooming out about the big pictures. What are the milestones? What are the tools? What are the roles? And then we're diving into the specifics of the mechanics of how this project is going to get done.
Wow, that was a whole lot. Thanks so much for still being here at the end to tie it all up with me. I really hope you've gained a newfound appreciation for the power and potential of thinking in systems. This is not just a tool, it's actually a way of approaching the world, and it really leads to a lot more effective solutions and just in general a greater understanding of the intricacies that shape our lives. So I really encourage you to continue exploring and applying these concepts to your everyday life. For me, systems thinking helps me engage with the interconnectedness of the world around me. I really like to seek out diverse perspectives, input on things that I wouldn't have even necessarily thought of, and helps me strive to make well-informed decisions that consider the broader context of where all of this information is coming from. So the journey of a systems thinker is an ongoing one, and it's just filled with continuous learning and growth. And I personally think of it as a lifetime exploration. And it's really something that keeps me deeply engaged, curious, and in awe of the world around me. So if after all of this, you're interested in still learning a little bit more about what me and my team do at Triple Creeks and how we apply systems thinking to business and nonprofit development, please check out our holistic financial planning course to learn how to create some financial systems. If that sounds intimidating or not quite up your alley, totally cool. Budgets are scary, but our first discovery call with potential clients is also always free. So especially if you are a nonprofit professional or a small business owner, this is a great way to get to know more about the services that Triple Creeks does. And you can go ahead and sign up for a free discovery call, and I will include that link to book one of those below as well. Hope to see you in those virtual calendar invites.